Hi, this is Scott Schrader here with a teaching on intercession from Parashah Korach. I'd like to direct you to Numbers 17, 9, verse 9, chapter 17, verse 9. And here in Numbers 17, 9, God told Aaron and Moses to separate themselves from the children of Israel, and that he was going to break out a plague on them and make a nation out of Moses. This is interesting, and I want you to see the contrast here with Psalm 91, verse 7, which says that God is able to protect a person. He puts them in his setter, in his dwelling place, in his hiding place, and a thousand will fall at your side, he says, but a plague, if a plague comes, but it will not come near you, whatever the danger is. Also, we see in Psalm 34:8 that the angels encamp about those that fear them to deliver them. We see the angels ministering to Yeshua after his temptation in the wilderness. And so there's a contrast here. One has to do with the setter. And we'll look at this word for a minute. Setter, Hebrew word. You can see that. This is setter. It starts with the sod. The Samek. And the Samek, the letter Samek, it has the idea of a thorn. It means the thorn, or to protect, like that thorny ring around you. And it has the idea of surrounding. So being surrounded with thorns, protecting you. Then we see the Tav. The Tav has to do with, the original symbol is the cross. And it's a sign, or it's a coming together, like a cross comes together. It's a bringing together. And then we have the last letter, which is the Resh, which is the symbol for head. The ancient letter is a head, a drawing of a head. And so it's the head, or the first, or the beginning, or the chief thing. And so we see a setter has to do with concealing something that is valuable to you. So it's that has the idea of being the chief thing. And it's a coming together, and a surrounding that's a protection around you. And so this setter of God, God was easily able to do that for Moses and Aaron. But why did he say to them to separate themselves? And so before we come back to that, let's go and talk about Abraham and the prophets of God. God, it says that he doesn't do anything without revealing it to his prophets. And we see that God sent angels to Abraham, and they informed him of what was going to happen to Sodom and Gomorrah. And we see Abraham bartering with the angels, with God, as to the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah and the sparing of them. And even though Abraham didn't get his total wish, he didn't go down far enough, there were not 10 righteous people in Sodom, he still gave him in spirit what he was interceding for, what he was asking for. He did save Lot, who was the only righteous person in the city. And so God told Abraham this thing. He tells his prophets, he gives them information, I believe, for warning. That's one of the things, warning to the people who are involved, but also so that prophet will intercede, because there's special power there that God has given that prophetic voice as being his friend, being his servant, being, in the modern times, his child. There's special authority there to intercede and prevent the thing from happening. We see that God is, he's actually at least 500 times more merciful than he is judgmental. And now, well, how do I know that? In Exodus 26, when it talks about the attributes of God, God describing himself, he says that he's merciful to thousands, it's plural in the Hebrew, thousands, at least 2,000 generations he's merciful to, and he's judgmental. Basically, he brings judgment down to 4 generations. So if you divide 2,000 by 4, that's 500. That's at least 500 times more merciful. And we see Yeshua, when Peter is asking him, he goes, Lord, if somebody comes and asks for forgiveness to me, how many times should I forgive him? And Yeshua tells him 7 times 70, which is 490 times. So that's in the same kind of ballpark. God expects us to maybe not be quite as merciful as he is, but to emulate him. And so I believe that was kind of a way of him saying you need to emulate the Father who's 500 times, at least 500 times more merciful than he is judgmental. So this is God's heart. And I believe what he was doing here with Moses and Aaron is he was giving them a cue or a clue. He was saying, look, I'm going to bring this judgment upon them. And so this was a time for Moses now to intercede and Aaron to intercede. Moses gives Aaron the proper instructions on what to do with the incense, and it's covering for the children of Israel, and it stops this plague. And sometimes God does this with us in intercession, and that's my point. Sometimes we see a situation that happens, and it may be kind of funny the way that happened, or it's an unusual thing, or it's just something that's there in our face. That is a cue for us. That it reveals something, and that revealing of what it is a cue for us to intercede for ourselves and for others. And so I want to encourage you to do that today. But it's not only us. We can be also encouraged because it says Yeshua is able to save us. God is able to save us from the uttermost because Yeshua ever lives to make intercession for us. And he does that in two ways. One, he prays for us. And the second, as we see this example with Aaron going and doing the incense, that he literally comes and intercedes for us as well. It doesn't mean just to pray for. It means he literally comes and works in the situation. We also, the Spirit prays through us, it says, with words that can't be uttered, that's intercession for us as well, because we don't know how to pray as we ought many times. And so we have these things happening in us, as well as God giving us cues. Here, intercede for this, and I will do something. And when we do that, we see God moves, that encourages us and builds our faith in him to move in it in a deeper way. God does this in us for growth. Moses could have said, okay, I've had it with these guys. Just do it and make a nation out of me, and we'll start all over again. But he didn't. We see the maturity in Moses. We have to think about ourselves. What will we do in that situation, considering all that Moses had gone through the many times? It's something for us to think about. And it's something for us to realize that God does want us to have that compassion like he has, to be 500 times more merciful than we are judgmental, and to lay down our hearts, lay down our lives, lay down our reputation, lay down a nation that would come out of us, and a ministry maybe that would come out of us, so that the ministry that God wants will prevail. And it's kind of a test for us in a way, these situations as well. I believe that was a test for Moses as well. And he passed that test, and Aaron passed that test. And we thank the Lord for doing that. He saved the nation of Israel, basically. And he did it more than one time, and Yeshua came through that nation. So we have a whole lot to thank him for on that. And so I just want to encourage you this day, this week, when these situations come, even the situations that we see now that are so unusual, and things that happen that reveal things to us that are so blatant or unusual, this is the time. This is the cue for you and for me and for God's people to intercede.